So what I wanted to talk about was a conversation I had with one of the competitors who was in one of the round reviews that we did, and something they said to me. They seem to enjoy the stuff, which is great, and they said they potentially want to like do stuff with us or whatever, which is also awesome, and we'd love to do. If any of you are interested in that kind of thing, we'd love to do round reviews with you and just talk to people about debate or whatever. Very interested in that. But with that said, what they said to me that got me thinking about those round reviews and about sort of, I guess, approach to debate and debate philosophy in general is they thought the analysis was fine and all, but they thought that I was much more focused on the truth value of the arguments rather than the strategic value of the arguments, and that they had approached the round, the development of that case, from a strategic point of view rather than a truthful point of view. And at first I was like, I think that's a fairly accurate assessment, right? And I think that there's some reasons behind that in terms of like just how analysis is going to work, because we have something in front of us and we can respond to it, and we don't have our negative case, right? So we can't be like, well, I would obviously say this, right? Instead, we have to be like, well, then that argument in isolation, here's what's right or wrong with it. And then if it's a strategic thing, right, that we're evaluating, we might be reading too much into it. You might have just made that argument without thinking of the strategy, so like, how do we go there, blah, 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 blah. But what that brought me to, that I was thinking about on the drive over here today, and that I wanted to get your feedback on, based on things you've said to me, is I think one of the defining characteristics of what makes an argument strategic is either that it is true, or that it's not true, but there's not a good way to say it's not true.
Right.
And I think I don't like the second kind of argument because it's kind of, I don't know. I don't want to say it's cheating, but basically to me it feels like cheating, right? And as a result, to me, it is never worth, if we're having a spectrum of true to strategic, it would never ever be worth going to the far end of the strategic spectrum at the expense of the truth. Because the more I think about it, it's incredibly strategic to just lie in rounds. It's super strategic. If people can't correct you on it, right? Which, in the case of things like Parley, they can't necessarily do, and blah, blah, blah. And so, as a result, I think that truth-based evaluation is A, important and necessary, but B, key to strategy. And the one thing I wanted to say is something that you've said to me as a coach, and just as a guiding philosophy for debate that's definitely informed the way I approach it, which is just that debate is a game, but it's not just a game. And I think that really matters, and I think that a lot of people do view it as just a game, and it's totally possible that I'm wrong or whatever, but like for me, of course it's not just a game. And if it is a game, it's a very poorly designed one that we've talked about a lot of times. So I just kind of wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, you brought up sort of three major things, and I'll go through them in order. The first is this idea of whether it's inherent to analysis or not. And I think a major shortcoming of the way we've been doing analysis so far is that people are making requests for what artifacts we should analyze, but not what analysis we should give. And that's a really good way of getting shitty analysis. Say it's a movie review, right? Like, even most movie reviews that are like, I give it an 8 out of 10 or 3 stars, they're analyzing a specific aspect of it, right? But it's just like a shitty high school essay to be like, write 5 paragraphs about this book. Like, the good stuff is like when you analyze a specific aspect of the book.
Kind of like doing a rec crit or a CA in speech as opposed to debate.
Right, or even like a video essay. Imagine a fucking video essay on YouTube being like, Dark Knight, the video essay.
It's
like,
good.
That's right, but if it's like, okay, like a specific aspect of it.
Chaos the Nolan trilogy or whatever.
Right, or like the exposition in The Dark Knight, right? Like that gives a much more specific goal, but when people making requests don't know what they want to see, or at least aren't being direct in what they want to see, the type of analysis that we give is always going to be broad, almost to the point of being useless. So we can only really treat things at face value because we're just sort of taking things as they come. I could go into, and the part of the reason why my analysis videos are so fucking tangent heavy, and as you and Robert were making fun of me for, They watched one of the analysis videos and they were making fun of me for one person said the name of the argument and I paused and talked about it for like 7 minutes. But that's because that's one thing the whole debate video could be about, and then fuck it, we hit play and then we're on another thing. And so you could either try to follow all the different tangents down to some degree, or you can be like, I don't know if that's true, and then move on.
Well, and part of the problem with the what does the audience want or whatever, right, is it's not like we necessarily know the
who our audience is
beyond people just asking questions in YouTube comments or on Reddit.
Sure.
But more importantly, I genuinely believe that for most of the people, what they want is I want you to say this team won that I think won, or say this team's bad that I think is bad, and
which is missing the point.
Yeah, which definitely is missing the point. What was the second thing? Yeah.
One of the interesting things about debate that we've talked about before is that there's very few limitations on someone being a good debater other than their mentality. Which is to say that if someone can be approaching baseball in exactly the right way to get good at baseball and just not be good yet. A lot of learning debate, which is why I think it's such a valuable activity, because anyone can be good at it. So once you get good at debate, you basically learn how you as a person get good at things you can be good at. I'm not saying anyone can be great at anything. There's people who are approaching baseball with exactly the right approach who just aren't good at baseball or not good at baseball yet. With debate, the subset of people who have the right understanding of debate and the right approach to debate, but who haven't figured it out yet and are beyond the point where they need our advice, is very small. Because that's what? 1 semester? 2 semesters? Right? How much of your own growing in debate was realizing you were thinking about it wrong? All of it, right?
Yeah, basically all of it.
All of it. Debaters don't get much smarter when they get good at debate. They don't learn more about the world. Sometimes they do, and I'm sure in high school is more so than with college competitors. But at least in college, most people who are making improvements are making improvements by nature of understanding the event better and understanding how to approach it better. And so it's hard to expect people who aren't there yet to ask the right questions. Because if they knew the right questions to ask, or if they had the right approach, then they would either already be good or they'd be fast-tracking, on their way there. So yeah, I think the instincts you're talking about to be can you do analysis on this video so you can just tell me that the team I think won and validate me? I think that's something as educators we have to sort of work with and work around, because the people who we have to help are there, and we have to sort of take that and be I guess what we're doing now, right? Just being yes, we will do this video, but then in our next video we'll talk shit about your question. Because it's, I'm not sure of a better approach to being yeah, we'll do that, but I also don't think you're asking the right questions. So that's my take on the big picture of what you're talking about from the strict analysis standpoint.
Sure.
The next bit, I have this debate habit, which I think we've talked about, which is I'll start talking and I'll say that I have 3 things to say.
And then not have 3?
Well, I'll just be I'll figure the other 2 out when I get there.
Yeah, dude,
or the other 1 out. I had 2, really. And right now I'm sitting here my debate instincts are, fill in a number 2. Finish strong with number 3.
Well, I mean, the other thing, I think the third thing I said that you potentially respond to is this, debate is a game, but not just a game thing.
Yeah, and then we'll get into sort of truth over whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Debate is, I think, part of what's... I might have talked about this on this channel before. But there was a Reddit comment that, blew my mind. Which was someone on the debate subreddit was talking about debate, and they said, debate is an activity that high school students do to get into a college. and like
That is the majority of people who debate.
and like that's what they see the whole thing as, which like I think the reason people see it that way is because we live in a bullshit bureaucratic world, right? And I think if most people stop to look at the world the way I do, they would want to fucking blow their brains out, because I do, and I think a lot of these kids. I didn't do good in high school. I was a fucking horrible high school student. Barely graduated. And part of the reason was because at every stop I was like, why am I doing this? Why do I have to do this? Now that was a relatively small part of the problem, but that was part of the problem. I don't think high performing kids can afford to ask that question. I don't think you could be good at getting good grades and all that shit without just jumping when people say jump, you know? And so I guess it makes sense that people haven't stopped to consider, why do you think people care about debate? Like, you acknowledge that it's to get into a good college. Why does the college care? Do they just pick an event out of a fucking hat, right? Or they just think of, oh, what's the most like arcane way? Like, why not make you guys fight over it? Why not like have a fucking sprinting contest? What is it about debate that appeals to the colleges? That might reveal a little bit of the inherent value of debate to you, and what value it has to you as a person, which is what the college cares about. If they cared about your grades, you already have grades. You already have other extracurriculars, right? So it sucks that so many people in the high school aspect of this community only see it as a way to get into a good college. And I think those people have a wall before they can get to being truly good at debate. Maybe not all of them. Maybe some formats of debate are fucking easy enough, right? Public forum. Maybe you can be the best public forum debater in a given year and just go through the motions because you want to get into a good school, right? But there's other things. This, like, writing a fucking book. People are like, you can't... Or, like, making a movie.
Well, I think one of the other differences in high school debate as opposed to college debate is, like, I guess funds, but, like, it's hard to phrase it in that sense. There's always a big concern in the high school community that, like, oh, well, camps cost this much money, and so all the rich, like, white dudes or whatever go to the expensive camp.
Well, it does have a sort of defeatist
well, but the thing is,
which isn't entirely untrue.
Oh, exactly. That's what I was going to get, right? It's like, it is. But the thing is, in college, like, almost all of the teams pay for all of your travel. And you have your coaches or whatever, right? And then even if you don't have that, the best team in the country for the last, like, 3 years, basically, in college has been Berkeley. And they're a student-run and funded program.
Not only that, but even if you take speech, the programs that tend to do the best... Like, let's take Bradley.
Totally.
The years Bradley does best are the years where they have the most community college competitors on their program. And community college competitors are just people. Most of them haven't done speech before. Anyone is in the running if they want to be. And we've had plenty of students who have no money or no background in this or have disabilities or...
Single mother, whatever.
Right, single mother. You could be the best in the country. Shout out to Nicole Sims.
That's great.
Yeah.
I wish she did debate.
Oh God, can you imagine?
Yeah.
Oh my God. But yeah, so yeah, I think it's hard to have that attitude about it in high school. But what can I say, man? You gotta do your fucking best, and we're certainly out here trying to give some resources out there to people who might not have it. I mean, I don't want to just complain that people have this attitude and not do things to discourage them from having a defeatist attitude about it. But the point I was making earlier, not to, I guess not cutting you off, but not to not give you the green flag to start talking, is obviously there's shit cash grab movies, right? But as like a writer, right? As a screenplay fucking, you want to get into the industry, there's just no way to do it. All forms of writers, right? There's just no way to do it unless you love writing. Because it's just way too much work for way too small a percentage of, like, reward. Like, the odds of it. The really low probability of reward for an insane amount of work to be a writer. Christopher Hitchens said that a writer is someone who can't help but write. And I think the college community embodies that a lot more strongly than the high school community. Who are just like, dude, I'm doing this because this is something I want to do or need to do. Fucking Hawkins is talking about doing a one-man show. Why is this full-time professor, national champion, who got everything he's ever gonna get out of this activity, out here trying to do a one-man show? Yao is doing fucking nationwide poetry tours. Why? You know, it's because these things matter. And I think that's also true with debate. Like, this activity gives you something if you allow it to. And if you're open to receiving that thing. And you hear that at every fucking bullshit jerk-off debate award reception, right? But it's true. And I think the high school scene is surrounded by cynical people who are there to make fucking money off of an activity they don't know anything about. I fucking worked for them. Yeah, I'll take their money.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
But and then there's people who are trying to make money off of it and trying to give coaches living. You're amazing at this activity. You're a great educator. I think you deserve to be able to make a living off of that. I think there's both a cynical approach to it and a more, like, I want to be good and I care about the activity, but also, like, it fucking helps that there's money in it.
Well, and that's what sucks, though, too, is, like, in terms of sustainability or whatever, like, college is always having a discussion regionally, nationally, community college 4-year about, like, dude, how do we get these numbers up? These numbers are so down, whereas high school, like, is as big as it's ever been. And
they have no idea what to do with their numbers. Dude, high school debate and middle school debate are bigger than anyone realizes. And I mean, like, bigger than the president of the NSDA realizes. It's shocking how big the activity is. Have you ever heard of MSPDP?
I'm not sure if someone had that.
It's a middle school format of debate that is the biggest format of debate. Like, of any of them. Public Forum. Bigger than Public Forum, I'm convinced.
Really?
Never heard of this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. There's all sorts of schools that just, like, do this thing in their own weird little network and have no connection to the other forensics. So anyway, I think this activity is fucking massive, and there's pros and cons to that. One of the cons is that there's a lot of money to be made. That's not entirely a con. There's people who will be empowered to do great things because of that money being possible to be made, you know? It's like fucking people being able to make a living off of playing baseball, right? The people who are already fucking set in life don't need to try to get a fucking baseball scholarship and play pro. Most professional athletes, I don't know that number actually, but I would imagine there's a significant number of professional athletes that don't have affluent backgrounds. And the fact that there is money in athletics benefits them. Obviously, there's cons to that too. But I think with debate, if it's in a lot of schools, it can be something where it's like, dude, if you decide you give a fuck and you listen and you apply yourself to this, you can go to college. You can get your fucking degree. You can get a job. You could be a professor. Or just teach, like, fucking full-time for a living. And make a living off of this, you know? That's the way it is with fucking chess. You know? Like, people, you get your master's certificate in chess, you can make $100 an hour. That's it. You're set for life, man. You're not going to live in a mansion, but you're going to have $100 an hour, and you can work as much or as little as you want for that money. You can have a YouTube channel. You can not have a YouTube channel. You can be a part of an academy or whatever, but there is a set fucking rate. $100 an hour for somebody with a master's certificate. And there's more books on chess than every sport combined, and they're all at the fucking library. So anyone can get good at chess if they apply themselves enough, and there's other barriers, obviously, but it's not like just fucking money is going to make that big a difference. I don't know where the debate community is where they are with that right now, but I think it's something that a lot of people are trying to address. I think you and I are two of them. I don't even remember how this tied into what we were talking about, but I think
debate is a game versus.
So I think yes, I think where that ties in is like, yeah, debate is a game, but it's also more than that, right? It's not an activity we do just for the sake of doing it, and it's not something that just has a winner or loser. Like, these things matter, and I want them to be taken seriously. And I think tricks and fucking saying things that aren't true are a symptom of not taking it seriously and not valuing what this activity is. Because, I mean, people talk about collapse of debate and all the time,
the
the framework all the time.
It should collapse. Those are my
Right.
favorites.
Just go fuck yourself, dude. Like,
It's like, yeah.
why are you here?
Great. What's collapse's activity that, like, is
Go
the
collapse
way...
ping pong.
Well,
like,
but-
why are you collapsing
Well,
this?
yeah, but also it's like, yeah, what's collapse's activity that, like, lets people who otherwise couldn't afford to, like, have homes
Yeah.
or get an education, like, get those things.
Yeah, I fucking hear you, man.
It's like, it's such a bad place to be, you know.
And I think part of what we can do is we know many of those people.
I've
Let's
never
talk
seen
to these-
any of those people on the non-national circuit. Let me just tell you, all
Yeah.
the CC I've been to dozens of California community college tournaments over the years, and I've never once heard anyone be like, "We gotta collapse this toxic, terrible community."
Yeah.
There's always people on the national circuit who are like able to travel around the country and like compete for these
Debate
major
sucks.
national. Yeah, it's crazy. It's like,
Give me
wow,
my trophy,
on
please.
scholarship or whatever.
Can't
as
wait
well.
for the
It's
can't wait
like
for the
great.
next opportunity
Yeah.
for me to say this thing I'm doing sucks.
Yeah.
Well, whatever, right? I think that's disingenuous, and I don't have a lot of sympathy for it. With that having been said, beyond that, right? I don't think the person we're talking about is going to care about that. I don't think I'm giving him or her a reason to care. Because it's just not how they see the activity, and that's fine, right? But now let's get into the third thing, which is just this idea behind truth being inherently strategic. At DVC, as you know, and you're the only person who ever gave me pushback on this, my 2 rules for our team is we don't lie and we don't cheat. And you were the only competitor I ever had that was like, well, I'll lie a little.
It's a little.
And I was like, why? And it took me years to realize it's because you don't fucking know anything.
Oh yeah.
And you just need to lie. Because if you, otherwise, they're going to be like, the Middle East, you'll be like, I don't know where that is. I've heard of it.
Look, whatever I read right before the round has to be the truth.
Right,
So-
because otherwise you got nothing. So you just got to be like, look, I'm pretty sure this is right. Which is a skill, you know? It fucking helps in Scrabble. I played, I tell you about playing Scrabble with Margaret?
I know you play Scrabble.
I played Scrabble with my girlfriend for the first time. We're playing with a couple other people I regularly play Scrabble with, and I have 7 letters, and I'm trying to figure out how to play bingo using all 7 letters to get 50 bonus points. And the only word I can spell with all 7 letters is provens, which isn't a word, right? But I'm like, fuck it. So I play it, and it's like 130 points. It's like an absurd amount of points, right? It's on like a triple whatever. And, and they're like, provens isn't a word. I'm like, it's a word. And they're like, no, it's not. I'm like, provens it. Look, first of all, I just happen to know that this is in the Scrabble dictionary because I've played it before and we've looked it up. But in addition to that, I even remember what the definition is. Provens is a mathematical term which is referring to there's a list of proofs that have been proven, that have been done. Those are the provens. And there's a list of proofs that have yet to be completed. Those are the unprovens. And I had my girlfriend completely convinced until fucking Kristen was like,
who plays with you all the
she's
time?
used to this bullshit, so she's like, no, I'm still challenging it. And then they were starting to look it up, and I was like, you don't need to look it up. It's not a word. And Margaret was like, what? Like, she hasn't believed us the word I've said since. She's like, I just don't know anymore because I was so convinced. So the bullshitting does have a functional benefit, but let's talk about the ways in which not telling the truth are counter to good strategy. For one thing, you can get called out for it in round. Now, obviously, these people know that, and they're just hoping that they're not, right? But it only works against people who aren't good. That's the thing. No strategy should rely on your opponent being bad, because if your opponent was bad, you could probably beat them anyway. This applies to every tactical activity there is. Your strategy should always assume the best play from your opponents, because otherwise, like, if they make a bad play, you would have beat them anyway. So just strategically is not good, because it only functions with an opponent that's not good enough to call you out on your bullshit. And maybe they're not out there in public forum, but there's nobody in the fucking policy world doing that shit. Like, maybe in some limited prep events it's easier to bullshit than others. But the fact of the matter is that, like, the debate mountaintop is not a place you can reach making shit up on the spot. And if you're not trying to reach that, what the fuck are you doing? Maybe you are trying to be the best. You know, when you're talking about the threat lists, like, what is the threat list for Jewish boys 13 to 15 in Silicon Valley in March? Like, is it you? Is that what you want to hear? So maybe if you just want to find your fucking little hill, fucking great, right? But that's not, you don't need me to help you there, right? You don't need my analysis to fucking get you there. So my analysis is assuming you want to be great. The other thing is that people really, really, really take for granted, and this is really what I wanted to get to. It was the first thing I thought of when you brought this up. So I decided to stall for 40 minutes.
Great choice, dude.
We haven't put up content for a while. I figure we put up
They gotta get used to us wasting time again.
1 6-hour video. No one will ask for another video. People undervalue goodwill in this activity. Goodwill is so important, and it will get you so fucking far. And having people against you in this activity is a fucking death sentence.
Yeah.
And people don't figure it out until they're fucking assholes. And then they're like, why is everyone lashing out at me? But I don't know what to tell you. And there's coaches that get it, and there's coaches that don't. And the coaches that don't get burnt out or kicked out real fucking quick.
Yeah, I mean, people have to like you. I mean, especially in an activity where your whole job is convincing people to vote for you for something. Like, it is... People... Oh my god, it's so crazy. People... Like, that's another thing where the strategy thing gets me. Where it's like, dude, it's a persuasion activity. Like, regardless of what you think of, like, it's a game, you still have to convince them to vote for you. And so it's like...
But also, like, if you and I... How many people did you beat in a debate who you were on good terms with?
A ton.
How many people beat you in a debate who you cannot forgive for beating you?
Literally one.
Great. Now fucking imagine that the reason they won, or you won, was that you lied about something, and the other team did everything right, except the format just prevented them from being able to prove that you're lying.
Be very annoying.
That's fucking unforgivable.
Yeah.
That person's never on your side again, right? And you need people on your side in this activity. You just do. Because when shit pops off on the internet, I don't know who that guy was, and I don't really want to get into the specific story, but that thing that happened on Reddit, when that thing happened, then people were like...
Jumped to defend,
people were like, not even jump to defend, but jump to, like, ask questions, right? Be like, wait, what are you saying happened? Because that doesn't sound right, right? I can think of people in this activity where if something like that happened, everyone would be like, fucking finally we can get this guy out.
Yep.
And that's what makes the difference, man. Whether you're a competitor or not, right? There was that guy who...
I think it's so different for lifers the more I think about it. And that's another thing we've talked about before. But it's like, for lifers like us and whatnot,
yeah.
it's like, it's just so different. Like, going from a competitor and when you are a competitor when you're a coach. Like, literally, just straight up, if you're going to... This is for anyone who's going to be a coach, like, ever.
Yeah.
None of these people give a fuck how good you were when you were a competitor.
No.
Not one of them give a fuck. When you're in a business meeting and you need these people to, like, vote on some proposal,
Which we
that you
just
think
were
really
last
matters,
weekend.
like, no one gives a fuck and is like, wow, that guy won this. No one gives a shit.
No one gives a
When your
slightest
career ends, your career fucking ends. And you've got to move on, right? Like, you only get a limited time to do this. And so, like, for people who are just transient in that sense and are like, oh,
Dude,
well, I'm
you
just
know
here to
how
win
little
and
it
leave.
fucking matters? Would you describe me as having... I mean, I'm not trying to, like... It's
No,
not like a
you're
dick
terrible.
measuring contest. Do you think I have more clout than you do right now?
Clout?
In those business meetings?
Absolutely.
Right. You were the number one ranked competitor for the majority of 2 years. I won 6 trophies ever in all of speech and debate, right? Like, I was not a strong competitor. You were the strongest competitor this region has had in years, if not one of the strongest ever. Especially if we're considering cross, like, event,
Sure.
like
LD
LD and Partly. Dude, it's a fucking short list of people who were on your level, and none of them became coaches in the last 10 years, right? But, like, that's just not what the...
Yeah, no one cares.
No one cares. It's just not what's being measured once you're a fucking coach, right? That's not what anyone's looking at.
But they definitely remember if you lied or, like, did some shady shit.
That's the thing, man. They will fucking hold that against you. If they dislike you, that's it. And there's people who I had personal beefs with that I just had to get over real fucking quick when I became a coach. And I was hesitant to at first. I wanted to hold the grudge. But our mentor, Tony, was like, dude, you can't. Like, you just can't. And looking back on it, who was that? I was watching a interview with Snoop Dogg this morning.
Snoop Dogg, yeah, dog. Yeah.
Go dog. He was on the fuck is that show I don't like?
Sway in the Morning.
It's the other one.
The Breakfast Club.
Yes. Fuck that guy. He was on there and they were talking about Snoop Dogg's like attitude with the industry and being all love and friendly and whatever. They're like, we saw you at a party, you were hanging out with everybody, you were running back and forth. It was in New York. So different than the way it was 20 years ago, blah, blah, blah. Because, you know, people were trying to kill him. And he was trying to kill people. And, you know, he's just talking about his, like, having to put that to rest and blah, blah, blah. And he was talking about how he's cool with Suge Knight now. Which is, like, fucking huge, right? And he was like, look, I look back on the issue, and it doesn't matter who was right and who was wrong. Like, I know that I was right, 100%. But it's just not worth it for me to, like, I just don't get anything out of that. And so I had that scenario where, objectively speaking, the other person was mistaken. And it was my last Parley debate ever.
I just
And
realized who you're talking
yeah.
about. This is taking me so long. I'm like,
This
who
was
are
my
you even
last
talking
Parley
about?
debate ever. And this judge, I said in the round that the
North Korea
famine
tried to
in
eat.
North Korea was so bad that people resorted to cannibalism. And this judge was so offended that I would accuse the North Korean people of that she chewed me out and voted me down and was... Granted, there was still another judge who voted against me.
On similar grounds, by the way.
On similar grounds. And she, like, chewed me out after the round and blah, blah, blah. And I just politely smiled and nodded. And I went to my coach and I was like, dude, this fucking bullshit happened and I'm so angry. And he's like, well, are you sure that that's correct? I was like, bruh, I was
there.
Let me show you guys
I was there, and it's just like...
I happen to have this out.
You had it with you there.
Here is the... Yeah. Here is the, like, 30-page report I did on North Korea that month.
It is the only thing. He's told me this from the day I met him. The only political issue in the world he actually cares about is your stance on North Korea and, like, what we should do about it.
It's the only one that fucking matters. Everybody else in the world is fucking insane.
He's just on his knees right now looking
Here
at
is the fucking book. Here's the book, right? I can go to the fucking chapter and point to you where they eat people.
And it's like
I was like, off the top of my head,
like letters or is it interviews from like North
Yes.
Korean survivors too.
They're
So
like,
it's like
I
they
ate
were
a person.
most And they were like, it's just so disgusting that you would characterize it like this. And
It's like that happened with one person. That person was mentally ill, and I just had to. And I was just like, I was fucking indignant
Yeah.
for years.
One. Oh god, keep going. But this funny side note: the kid he ended up losing this round to.
Oh
ended
my
up
god, I
winning
should have won.
the LD National Championship.
Like, he became
2
one of the
years
best
later.
debaters
It's
in
so
the country.
funny.
But I had beaten him. And so Paul still doesn't let it go. He's like, oh, you know that guy who beat you?
Yeah.
I'm like, he didn't beat me. But whatever. That was my, like, what? Everybody has a fucking chip on their shoulder.
Yeah.
That was my, like, I could have been somebody.
But
could have been a
to speak
contender.
to that subject in terms of like being upset about it or whatever, or like holding a grudge.
Well,
You haven't held that grudge to such a degree that I literally, when you were telling
Yeah,
before you
no,
told the
it's
story,
gone.
I was like, "Who are you talking about that you have
no,
a problem?"
we're cool now. We hang out. We're friends. We hug. You have to be. It's so much better this way. Who cares? I don't have that trophy. I don't have the silver trophy anymore, and I wouldn't still have it if it was gold. It doesn't fucking matter. And it's so much more important how we're handling this thing that happened. But the thing is, like, if I had lied or if I had tried to just, like, be a fucking asshole about it, like, how do you forgive that? How do you move on from that? And you just did, and yeah, I get most high school competitors doing this don't plan to do this for life. And that's fine, but even then, it's so much easier. It's so much easier to succeed with people rooting for you than rooting against you, man. And I think the person in particular who we're talking about has you rooting for them, but sounds like a lot of people rooting against them. I don't know very much about that person or that team or the circumstances surrounding it, but just from what tangentially I know, seems like a lot of people are talking a lot of shit, and maybe they wouldn't if you weren't lying, which is objectively a dick move, right? It's not strategic. It's not like nobody else thought of that, right? Like, I think it's really fucking exaggerating calling lying a strategy. Right? The Belt and Road Initiative will end poverty. That would make me win, right? Well, yeah, that would make you win. Well, let's say that. Gee, nobody thought of that.
I can't believe it. Another one.